Hello, everyone. This is Chris Adams. I'm the president of Balancing Act and one of the co-founders of Balancing Act and the other suite of tools that we have designed to help with budget engagement, to help local governments and state governments and connect with their residents and share information and get informed input. Today we're going to have a focused session that is going to look specifically at our taxpayer receipt. We have another series of webinars called Quick Start that goes over 3 sessions that is designed to help develop an entire Balancing Act simulation, including taxpayer receipt, but this one is going to focus directly on taxpayer receipt. It should take about half an hour. We'll go a little bit more in depth than we would ordinarily, but we also won't take too much of your time. So I want to thank everybody for joining. All right. So let's go ahead and begin. And I found that the very best way of sharing what Balancing Act can do is by demonstration. And so the plan for today is going to be to look at some samples, and we'll be looking at Corona, California, Chesterfield County, Virginia, Hudson, Ohio, and Wheat Ridge, Colorado. And then I'm going to walk you through the process of creating your own, and I'm going to use a spec sheet that I created about 2 hours ago for the city of Pittsburgh, and I just walked through it with 2 other budget analysts. So very much a live learning opportunity here. All right, so let me now go to the live simulation. I'm just going to walk you through some of these things. Okay, so this is city of Corona, excuse me. They're one of our most recent to go live, and they've done a nice job. They offer both Balancing Act simulation and Balancing Act tax receipt in both Spanish and English. And I'll go ahead and show you the way that we met them was through an article that was in Governing Magazine called "You Paid Your Taxes, So How About a Receipt?" This ran on April 15th, tax day of this year, and it brought a few folks to us, and they realized that we had a tool that might be helpful with them. And so this is how it looks from their website. And so if we wanted to see the Spanish one, we click right here. But if we want to look at the English one, we go here. You can also see they were sort of pioneers. They worked with us to create some custom branding for them. So their pages all have this nice header on it. It's a little bit of customization work, but they thought it was worth it for them, and I have to say it looks awfully nice. So the first screen of taxpayer receipt says, "Want a receipt for your city of Corona, California taxes?" And then you can click here and get a little bit of information. They want to let you know that that this is just for revenues that are collected and spent on city services, and they give some examples of that. And they also want to let you know that sales and property taxes are split among different levels of government. That's really important, and particularly in a high property tax state like California. Counties and cities both seem to want to educate their residents to let them know that even though property taxes might seem very high, that only a sliver of that goes to the city and the county for use on city and county services, and that at least in that state, the bulk of it goes to the schools. Okay, so you've learned a little bit about it, and so it says answer a few questions to find out how much you paid. So it says, what is your annual income? It defines that right here, your gross annual income. And by the way, this is all customizable, and that's why I've got 4 of these up here to show you, is that they're all a little bit different. Revenue is really very idiosyncratic, and so we customize each of these, but we've come across enough situations that we've got a pretty good way of handling most issues. So if you put in your annual income, it's California, so it's a pretty high income place. I'm going to put in about $65,000. And then I'm going to put in an age. I'll put in 40. And while it might look like we're calculating income tax here, we're actually not. I'll show you an example of calculating income tax in just a moment. But what we're calculating here is we worked on a technique with an economist from Colorado State University to estimate sales taxes paid. And so we created a technique on the back end that uses the consumer expenditure survey that says somebody with this level of income and this age has X amount of disposable income that can be used for goods and services, and then a 40-year-old buys X market basket of goods, and then we do an approximation of which of those goods and services are sales taxable and which are not, and then we create an estimate of the sales tax. So So this is actually estimating local sales tax, and we just for this purpose of the taxpayer receipt app for the city, it's only the portion that the city can use. And then down here, it's asking about property taxes. You own a home in Corona. What is the assessed value of your primary residence? Most people wouldn't know that, and so we provide a quick link to the county assessor's website, and you can look it up by parcel. We can also use, instead of assessed value, we can use market value, and we can use actual value. The benefit of using market value is that most people have a pretty good sense of what the market value of their home is, and so they wouldn't necessarily have to do a lookup. But most of our local governments want to use assessed value because it's more accurate, and it really is sort of a different animal. And so it's just one step to send somebody off to the assessor's website to look up the value of their home. I'm going to go ahead and put in about $80,000 here, and then we're going to view your tax receipt. And so they've kept their header that goes throughout this, and they're then presented with a receipt. And it looks like they might have done theirs in alphabetical order. So you've got administrative services, and it tells you what that is. So it tells you that the Human Resources Office monitors and evaluates current city programs and policies, develops and enhances new or existing programs to achieve organizational goals. And then so forth for all of these. One thing that elected officials and top staff leadership, top professional leadership are pretty happy to see is that usually a very, very small amount of a taxpayer's dollar goes to pay for them. In this case, it's 38 cents goes to the city council and 3 cents goes to the treasurer. Let's see if I can find the city manager. That's usually pretty small as well. I'm not sure where they put it here. Usually the larger ones have to do with public safety. There it is, management services. So city manager, they describe what the city manager does, $2.13. So this is a really good way of, without getting defensive, if you've got residents that are saying that that your city government is bloated and that you know, all the money is going to the city manager or to the elected officials, this is actually a really good way of demonstrating that no, it actually isn't. It's going to things like the police department or going to things like investigations. So then as you scroll down here, you get a total that goes to the city, and it gives you a breakdown. And so it tells you that of that $298, that $165 is sales tax and $133 is property tax. And so that we found is a really useful way of just letting people know where their tax mix is. And then down here, since Corona is also a user of our balancing act simulation, it says are these the right priorities? And if somebody is interested in that, they can try an interactive simulation and make their own budget and share it with the public officials. And then it takes you to the balancing act simulation, the one in English. So it's loading, and they've done a really nice job with their simulation too. So then, if you go, let's take a look at Chesterfield County. It looks like here we are. So they've sort of uniquely, they've put their taxpayer receipt in Blueprint Chesterfield, which is their strategic plan. They've done a really nice job. They've got a terrific local government staff here. And they ask the question, want to better understand how your tax dollars are being spent? And it says, check out the simulation. And so similar verbiage up here. There's an about text that just describes it a little bit. Their county, so they've got a couple different wrinkles. And then they have a link here to the budget. But then it says answer a few simple questions, and it will estimate how your taxes are being allocated amongst county services. And so it says, do you own a home in Chesterfield County? And if you say yes, what's the assessed value? So I'm going to put in $65,000. If you own another one, you click here. And then the reason why I wanted to show you this, or one reason is it's a county, but also they do a motor vehicle tax. And so do you own a car? So it says, what is the current value of your automobile? And if you click here, it'll take you to NADA, the National Automobile Dealers Association guide, so that you can estimate it. So we can send you to Kelley Blue Book. We can send you, pretty much wherever you want. If you're in Kansas, there's actually a very specific lookup that you need to do. It's kind of like assessed value. And so we send people to that for our counties that we work with there. But let's just say that you've got an automobile that's worth $8,000, and then you can view your simulated tax receipt. And so in this case, schools are included under the county aegis here. And so it talks about that a little bit. but it does say that it's a transfer. You can exclude things. We have some local governments that if there's a big item like this that they really don't have any control over, if it's just a pass-through, they exclude it because it's not something that the county has discretion over. But it's really up to each local government to decide. You can see that $17 goes towards technology, parks and recreation, a little bit larger item, parks and rec at $12, and so forth. And then down here, you see what that breakdown is and see that it's really primarily property tax. I want to show you City of Wheat Ridge, Colorado. There's a very engaged and energetic assistant to the city manager there named Carly Lawrence. And she actually had several ideas that she suggested to us to help us create a better balancing act simulation. I'll show you what those two were. She's a very smart young woman, and it's been fun working with her. So this is there under city budget, under budget engagement. You can see down here, this is, I think it's a CRADA product. It's a transparency tool, and then balancing act simulation is here, and then tax receipt is here. And so let me show you what they've done that's sort of interesting. This was Carly's suggestion. So what's your annual income? Put in $50,000 and put in age. I think 35 is good for that city. And this is what Carly did because she wanted, she said, well, what if one of our residents buys, goes over to Arvada and makes purchases? That money is not available to us to use for goods and services, or to use for the services that the city provides. And so she said, could we put in an opportunity for somebody to make an estimate? And we said, well, I think that makes sense. And it's also sort of, it gives a more accurate view of how much a person is paying in sales tax that's usable by that particular local government. And it's also a subtle buy local message that it just lets you know that if you buy and make your purchases in a neighboring town, that doesn't actually go to pay for your own sidewalks, for example. So let's go ahead and just say 80%, and then I'll just put in a value quickly for home. They've used assessed value, which is most likely. So I'm going to put in $50,000, and then view your tax receipt. And then I'm not going to spend too much time on this because we've already seen it, but I did want to show you that down here, this was Carly's suggestion as well. She asked if we could do a little breakdown. I think that was actually a really good idea, especially in those high property value locations like California, where property tax is really high, and I think it makes sense for local government to want to show what portion of that is available. All right, then the last one I'm going to show you, and I won't get too in depth on this one, but I just wanted, this is Hudson, Ohio. I wanted to show you theirs because they do an income tax. And so I think it's loading. And so when they ask for your annual income, this is Ohio, it's not because they want to calculate sales tax, it's because they actually do want to calculate an income tax. I'll say $50,000. And then this is complicated, and I think it's not that common. They have if you don't work in Hudson, you pay your income tax to another city. And so that's what this is all about. I'm not going to go into this. I'm just going to say, do you work outside of Hudson? I'm going to say no. And then here is sort of this is a property tax calculator. Here's an example where they've used the market value. And so over here, instead of sending the user to the assessor's website, they send you to Zillow so that you can get a Zestimate if you don't think you have a good sense of what your market value is. So once again, very easy to do whatever you want. Since we're talking market value as opposed to assessed value, I'm going to make that average home price quite a bit more expensive, and then view your tax receipt. And they also have some pass-through funding as well that goes to the schools and to some of the county parks. And so they wanted to show all that. This is not as common to put all of these things on the simulation. Most of the time, if it really is a county expense like this in your city, you wouldn't put this type of stuff on here. And then I don't think that they're not using that breakdown, but once again, that's also customizable. All right, let me go back to the presentation, and I'll just show you, I'll just walk through with you what I did about 2 hours ago with two senior budget analysts with the city of Pittsburgh. And so once we have a client that says that they want to use Taxpayer receipt, the first thing that we have them do, if you're familiar with Balancing Acts back end, is we have them build their budget, and that we've got other webinars on that. It's a pretty straightforward task. If you have the information, you create your categories and your subcategories, then you put in a dollar amount, and then you add some descriptions. And both Balancing Act Simulation and Balancing Act Taxpayer Receipt uses that as a basis for its output. And so, assuming that you already have the basics of a simulation created, we can either express that through a simulation for interaction, or we can express it as a taxpayer receipt so that you can demonstrate accountability and show people where their tax dollars are going. All right, so then I usually try to find a comp, and Pittsburgh is a local government that actually does have an income tax. I went ahead and chose Hudson, the one that I just showed you, so it asks what's your annual income, but they don't have that quirk about the variability of it depending on whether or not you work in the city or not. And then I just flagged, do you actually want to use market value or something else? And they ended up wanting to use assessed value. But this is just to confirm that revenues are distributed proportionally across all items, and the items that they're using are income tax and property tax. This is important, this proportionality. In most of the cases, it would be the case that all the items would be proportionally expressed on the taxpayer receipt based on the estimated income. But in some cases, that's not true. There might be a special mill that only goes to a certain item. Like we have one partner who they passed a mill, actually two separate mills, one for affordable housing, this is the city of Denver, one for affordable housing and one for police and fire pension. And so the proceeds from those mills only go to affordable housing and to those pensions, and so they aren't proportionally distributed. So we can do exceptions on the back end. It's not too hard, but it is a little bit of customization. And as I said earlier, revenue is always idiosyncratic, but we've come up with ways to handle most quirks. This is property tax. This is just an example I would have. Is the question, the input would be, what is the assessed value of your residence? And so people would input that. This is sort of a draft proposal of what we'd have for the info box there. And then I always ask our local government folks to verify the calculation. So in this case, it's multiply assessed value by what? So I'm asking them just to tell me what the X is here, and then confirming that it gets distributed proportionally to all items on Balancing Act. Income tax is very straightforward. What is your annual income? And so this is sample info text, and then down here we're just multiplying the input by 3%. To distribute proportionally to all items on Balancing Act. And it's very similar also on, say that we were doing a sales tax, we just have another input box for age, and then the complexity where we have the table lookups and the use of consumer expenditure survey, all that happens on the back end, and the user never sees it. And actually, in fact, local government folks don't really see it unless they want to. And then this is just to confirm what you want in your About tab, and we can put whatever you want there. I usually suggest some things just based on past experience, but we do send out this PowerPoint and ask all of our local governments to confirm that it is indeed what we want. It's a pretty simple process. I usually schedule about a 20-minute onboarding meeting and just kind of get a sense of what the revenue sources are and if there are any quirks, and then I propose the spec sheet. And then I send it to you, and then you can circulate it to your revenue expert or whoever needs to sign off and confirm what you want, and then we finish it up. Let's see. Let me just do one other thing to show you. This is one that the media and residents seem to really like. So I just want to show you a little bit of press. I've already shown you the governing article 1. This is WAVY, believe it or not, there's in Virginia Beach, the budget got some positive attention. So this was when they first launched their taxpayer receipt and their Balancing Act, and so they got some terrific media, including Catherine Whitesell, who is our main client there, who just talks about, I'm a big proponent of people understanding how we spend their tax money, and they have a link to taxpayer receipt, and it was just sort of a very positive budget media that kind of all the way around. Here's another example, since we've talked about Chesterfield County. This is the Chesterfield Observer. You've got both some really nice comments from the Budget Management Director talking about informed citizenry is a powerful thing. One nice thing that they did is that their elected officials also got into the act. Let's see, where are we? Here we are. Dorothy Jekyll, Chairwoman of the Board of Supervisors. Our board believes in transparency and accountability in spending local tax dollars. It has always been a challenge to come up with user-friendly tools to communicate information. This one, it just seems like elected officials really appreciate this one. And there's actually been a little bit of research done on taxpayer receipts. There's a scholar at the University of North Carolina School of Government and a few others that have looked into this, and they're very encouraging of it as pretty simple and relevant way to get some transparency. But the nice thing about it is it really doesn't seem like there's any correlation between party affiliation or sort of ideology about whether or not you believe in big or small government. It seems to be sort of the interest in doing this type of accountability tool. It really seems to be sort of across the ideological spectrum, which is good. That's what we were sort of aiming for, and we think that good governance and accountability should not be a partisan issue. And but we also think that there is an appropriate question about the size of government, and should we be do we have it at the right level, and also some transparency about what your dollars are actually going for. So we've had some good experiences with that. I'm just wrapping up now. Each revenue source is different, and we customize the input screen. That's what that whole process was that I just walked you through using City of Pittsburgh as an example. And then also to let you know that in about 2 or 3 months, with our next major software release, we're going to be automating a lot of what I just walked you through. Right now, it's not very painful at all on your side, but we're actually going to be building it right into the control panel. And we'll still have to do some customizations for the quirks, but 80% of what is required with taxpayer receipt, once we get this done, I think should be something that can just be done automatically. And we like doing that. We spend a fair amount of time designing our software because we realize that every local government is unique. But as we work with more and more, we can come up with some ways to sort of meet 80% of the needs with software, which makes it better, faster, cheaper, which we all sort of support and enjoy. So if there are any questions, you should have a place to raise your hand on your screen. And if you do have a question, please raise your hand and let me know. I'm not seeing too many. This was meant to be sort of straightforward and kind of short. I wanted to be under half an hour, which I think we're doing a good job with. So I'm not seeing any hands. So why don't I just thank you all for participating. And if you have any questions, please give us a shout here at Balancing Act. We love to hear from local government officials that are trying to do great things. So once again, thank you very much.